We're going to look at an example of how to use Solver in Excel to solve a linear inequality system. So our problem is we have a dietitian in a hospital has to arrange a special diet composed of two foods. Let's call them A and B. 1 ounce of food A contains 30 units of calcium, 10 units of iron, and 10 units of vitamin A. It also contains 8 units of cholesterol. 1 ounce of food B contains 10 units of calcium, 10 units of iron, 30 units of vitamin A, and 4 units of cholesterol. Now, to meet the minimum dietary requirements, we have to have a total of 360 units of calcium. So however much of food A and food B we use, we need to have enough so that we get at least 360 units of calcium. With iron, we have to total up to at least 160 units of iron and 240 units of vitamin A. And then what we want to do is minimize the total amount of cholesterol. So our objective function is going to be to minimize the total amount of cholesterol. Each unit of food A has 8 units of cholesterol. Each ounce of food B has 4 units of cholesterol. So the total amount of cholesterol, where we're using, get that out of the way there, A being the number of ounces of food A and B being the number of ounces of food B, is going to be 8A plus 4B. For example, if we had 10 units of food A and 10 units of food B, that would be 80 ounces of cholesterol, sorry, probably not ounces, 80 units of cholesterol and 40 units of cholesterol for a total of 120 units of cholesterol if we had 10 ounces of A and 10 ounces of B. And then our constraints, because each ounce of food A has 30 units of calcium and each ounce of food B has 10 units of calcium, we need to have a total of calcium at least 360. It's fine if we exceed it. So if we did use 10 ounces of A and 10 ounces of B, that'd be 300 units of calcium, 100 units of calcium, 400 total units of calcium, and that would meet the requirement of calcium if we had 10 units of A and 10 units of B. I'm just making up the 10 ounces of A and 10 ounces of B just to help you understand the inequalities here. So with the iron, 10A plus 10B has to be at least 160, because again, coming up here to our table, that's how much is in food A and food B. And for vitamin A, 10A plus 30B has to be at least 240, because we have 10 units of vitamin A in each ounce of food A and 30 units of vitamin A in each ounce of food B. And we have a minimum requirement of at least 240. Okay, so now that we've got the problem set up, we know our objective function, what our variables are, and our constraints. Let's go ahead and look at Excel. Okay, I did some of the setup already, and let's go ahead and make this a little larger for you to see. So we're still working on the same diet problem. Our objective was to minimize the cholesterol, which was 8A plus 4B, the total amount of cholesterol. We're using for variables ounces of food A, ounces of food B. And then our calcium, 30A plus 10B, has to be at least 360. 10A plus 10B, the iron, has to be at least 160. Vitamin A, 10A plus 30B, has to be the 240. Now what I've done is in these two squares is just thrown in a couple dummy numbers. 0 and 0, 1 and 1. I just like to have some sort of number here. And then what I want to put here is my formula so that Excel can understand what my formula is that I want to minimize, my 8A plus 4B. So this is going to be a formula, so it has to start with an equal sign, and then 8 times the cell that contains my reference for the variable A, plus 4 times the cell that contains my reference for the variable B. So this is how I translate the 8A plus 4B. 8 times the cell E7 plus 4 times the cell E8, where E7 and E8 are the cells representing my variables. Now I'll translate my inequalities down here also, and whoops, let me undo that. I do that a lot. Need to remember to hit enter and finish my formula before I start a new formula in another cell. Okay, let's put that in boxes here. So this formula will be 30 times A plus 10 times B. This formula will be 10 times A plus 10 times B. And then this formula, 10 times A plus 30 times B. And then over here, I've put in my constraints. And again, remember, since I'm trying to minimize, this is what the usual case is, all my constraints are actually greater than or equals rather than less than or equals. Now to use solver, I need to go up to the data menu. And my icon here in the way, let me see if I can move that over. Okay, so I'm going to select solver here. Get that over here. So my target cell here is E5. And be careful here, I want to minimize it. The default is maximum, so be sure to watch out for that when you have a minimize. By changing my cells, these are my parameters, so here are my variables. Subject to the constraints, let me go ahead and take these out here, put them in again for you. Subject to the constraints, I'm going to add this constraint. I can tab over, but I don't want to be less than or equal, I want to be greater than or equal to this cell. I'll click on add to put in my next cell reference, D12, greater than or equal to the constraint here in the cell F12. Add the third constraint. This one is also greater than or equal, and then my cell there. Now that I've got all three constraints in, I can click OK. And then one thing to watch out for here under options, be sure to click on assume linear and assume non-negative. OK, and then we can press solver, and it solves our equation. Now be sure when you finish a problem that you actually write down the solution. Whoops, close. There we go. So what we've decided here is that if we have 10 ounces of food A and 6 ounces of food B, I've met my calcium requirement, I've met my iron requirement, and I've exceeded my vitamin A requirements. I'm getting a little extra vitamin A, which is fine. We just need to meet the minimum, more is fine. And then what we've done is minimize the cholesterol at 104 units. So our conclusions here. So we need to serve 10 ounces of food A and 4 ounces of food B. I can't spell very well. Let's fix that. To meet the minimum requirements, and minimize the cholesterol. Okay, and then I can make that look pretty by selecting a few cells here, going to Home, Merge and Center, Wrap Text, and that looks pretty good. We can throw a box around it, and we'll give it a nice color of string peas.